Welcome to this Adcon webinar on plant protection. How to optimize, what can we do, what is the Adcon offer, just some general things, and then I will share a specific example on potato blight with you. My name is Peter Rodgers. I'm working for Adcon as a sales manager in Northern Europe. My background is in agriculture. I've been working in agriculture for the past 25 years, always involved in running disease models, optimizing plant protection, and optimizing irrigation. Firstly, why actually do we need to improve? Why do we need to improve on our crop production? Well, it's foreseen that in 2050 we will be with 10 billion people on this planet. And of course, all these people will need food, will need something to eat. In the line of climate change, in the line of declining hectares that is available to grow crops, we will really need to improve our productivity to feed those 10 billion people. And of course, it's a big potential market, but if we really want to feed these people, then we need to improve our productivity. And especially smart agriculture, precision farming is one of the solutions to solve this problem or helping feed all those people that are around. Of course, in the past already several large steps were taken, especially with only the introduction of plant protection chemistry, like insecticides, fungicides, developed over the past 50 years or so, and they of course reduce the impact of the diseases and have helped farmers to increase their production, which is basically a good thing. But of course, all good things always have side effects as well. The crops or diseases have developed resistance against the chemicals. The way of applying the chemicals has sometimes led to pollution in either groundwater or surface water, and we have seen some negative other environmental effects like decrease of biodiversity in our nature. So not all has been positive over the past years that chemicals were developed. So it's not only chemicals that are in the end the solution. We need to combine different strategies. We need to look at our cultural practices to reduce the risk. We could use beneficial organisms that eat away our animals that can protect, that will attack our crops, breeding to create more resistant crops that can cope with disease, and in the end, if then those measures do not help, we should apply, only then we should apply the chemicals. And so far, usually chemicals are applied based on the calendar, so every week or every 2 weeks or every 3 weeks, which is actually the most common practice to this date. And especially the Adcon disease models, disease extensions can actually help in improving the efficacy and timing of the chemicals. And this is basically just knowledge that can help us to apply our crop protection better. If we look at an example from the past, the Ochrana, which is actually a grape disease. It was a common pest born in the US, and actually evolution has made American varieties resistant. Also, this pest was imported into Europe around 1850. And the grape crops were actually severely affected and almost eradicated, so it was not possible to grow grapes and make wine actually in Europe. Until somebody smart found out that a purely botanical solution, crafting with resistant rootstock, was actually a solution and this whole problem of phylloxera was gone. This just demonstrates that with knowledge we can actually fight or prevent the disease from affecting our crop. And if we really want to improve our strategy, improve the quality and quantity of our yields, we should always combine these three components together to improve cultural practices, to preserve the ecosystem. Of course, if possible, to use the most resistant variety that have the good performance, and then only as a last resort we can use chemicals when it's necessary. But of course, for all these three things, extensive knowledge of these things is important, because without the knowledge, the only option is just to apply chemicals in a preventative and a standard way and not based on disease pressure. So if we look at crops, diseases, and the environment, actually we call that the plant disease triangle. So we have the host, which is our crop. We have the pathogen, which could be late blight in potatoes or downy mildew in grapes. And then of course we have the environment, the weather. And of course the weather is something that the Adcon equipment is specifically very strong in. So we look at these three things, the host, the pathogen, and the environment. And of course, it looks very simple, but basically only the disease in your crop will happen if plants have emerged or the buds have been broken. There will be no downy mildew on grape crops if there's no leaves yet. There needs to be downy mildew in the area, and of course the weather conditions, the environmental conditions need to be favorable for the development of the disease. We look at it in this way. If the circles do not overlap, so there's a crop but there's no disease and the weather is not favorable for disease onset, there will be just no disease and no attacks of the crop. If there's a host and there is a pathogen but still the weather is not very favorable, also nothing much will happen. But of course, if we've got a host and we've got the disease in the area and we've got very wet, rainy weather conditions, then diseases like downy mildew or late blight will really attack the crop, and in that case we will need to apply our chemicals at that stage. And of course, the crops can be different. The crop can be susceptible or it can be resistant. For different diseases, different weather conditions are important. Sometimes it's air temperature, sometimes it's soil temperature, sometimes it's soil moisture, rainfall, relative humidity. All these factors can be important depending on which disease we are talking about. And we're talking about fungi, diseases like late blight or downy mildew, but we also talk about insects that could attack your crop, where we can also offer a solution. But of course, offering a solution means that we must have knowledge of these three factors: knowledge of the crops, knowledge of the diseases, of the pathogens, the life cycle, development conditions, how many hours of leaf wetness do we need, how many hours of high relative humidity do we need, and we need to have knowledge of the environment, information about the environment, like weather data, like soil data, and of course with our Adcon solution, that is what we can offer. In the end, the Adcon solution is a web-based server, a server where the data is accessible from anywhere with just a browser. It's supported on mobile devices, so you can see the data on mobile devices as well. And we also have the option to make this information available in iframes on third-party websites. The system is in a lot of different languages available, and it's highly flexible, so user rights and privileges can be set up in a very flexible way. So, for instance, one farmer can only see the weather station which is in his fields and not other weather stations that are owned by his neighbors, and of course the other way around. It's basically the Advantage Pro system is organized like the Explorer in Windows, so you can move the data to folders, you can see the data in folders, you can create panels, you can create stations itself, and basically all this data is then made available by customer, by area, by station, by need, and in the end, the data views are also very highly flexible. As in the left bottom, you can see you can set up very simple with a few mouse clicks. You can set up a trend, you can set up a graph where you can see if the risk is low, medium, high, or moderate, which can be done very flexible. The system also offers, for instance, statistics on the fly, so you can easily calculate daily rainfall, maximum temperatures, minimum temperatures. All this information can be made available very dynamically. If we then look at extensions, calculation extensions, we can do basic calculations like daily rainfall totals. We can do degree day calculations, dew points, reference evapotranspiration. We have export functions. We can do all kinds of soil moisture calculations. We offer an whole range of standard functions which we can offer. But of course, today we want to look a bit more into detail into the disease options that we can offer. Over the past 20 years or so, we've developed disease models for many crops. Or actually, I should say, we have not developed disease models, we've implemented disease models for many crops. Because it's our approach to use the disease models that are developed by the experts in their fields, in their country, in their crop, in their disease. They know at best how the disease works and how the disease reacts to the environment, and we use their knowledge to implement the disease models that they have developed. And for currently, we have models for around 30 crops. And if this is not enough for you, we also offer some generic models where with a bit of fine-tuning, you can actually create your own calculations, and these models can then actually be customized again for special climatic areas. Most of these models are of course related to a crop, and you can set up, as you can see in the top right part of the screen, you set up several stages of the crop. So, and of course, in some parts of some stages, the crop might be more susceptible than others, and almost all the disease models calculate different indexes. It can be a daily index, it can be a accumulated index, or it can, for instance, show you your treatment efficiency to help you understand what is actually going on in your fields. So if we then look at the plant protection solution that we offer, of course, the solution is based on our Adcon weather stations. And here in this picture you see a nice Adcon weather station in a grape crop. A weather station that will measure, in this case, wind speed, global radiation, relative humidity, air temperature, leaf wetness, and rainfall. Of course, all the stations are solar powered, so they can run by themselves. As you can see with the small antenna on top, all the data is delivered into the cloud. Actually, we've been doing this for over the past 15 years. So we're actually one of the first to have all the data available in the cloud. The unit has a SIM card inside, and will send the data to your Advantage Pro server, where you can then log on and see and do with the data whatever you want. The benefit of the Adcon system is also that it's not only delivering the data. Once the station is online, you can talk to the station, so to say, and see the status, the station health, and make maybe changes on some parameters like logging interval or transmission interval. So it's very robust and very reliable, and all the data is usually almost always there. In the end, what can we do with it? We talk about pest and disease control, so optimize the spray timing, therefore reducing crop loss. If we only spray when needed, only spray when the crop needs the chemicals, we reduce chemical residues in crop, soil and groundwater, and of course to supermarkets, to the processing industry, but also to basically to our consumers in the market, we actually can demonstrate that we only spray when we need it. So we have full traceability. What do we apply? When do we apply it? And most important, of course, why do we apply it? Having all this weather information, of course, allows for the farmers to do other things with it, like frost protection, like irrigation optimization. So the data is there and you can use it for many other purposes as well. So let's look then at one example how this will work out. And we have taken potato blight as an example, and here you see actually the life cycle of the fungus, because basically what the Adcon disease solution does, you replay the life cycle of the fungus, and if you know how the fungus behaves, then you can react to that and also proactively react to that and apply chemicals just before the disease is going to attack your crop. So in this case, we need spores to be created, which usually takes high relative humidity. The spores are then released into the air. The spores then land on a leaf, and if this leaf is wet enough for long enough time, they germinate and a new lesion is formed, and then this whole cycle starts again and continues. Unless, of course, the weather is not favorable or we apply chemicals at the right time. For the late blight disease, we have used or implemented the Ulrich-Schröter model, which was actually developed in Germany, and this model is based on rainfall, relative humidity and air temperature, and it gives two indexes, a daily index and a accumulated index. And if you have your weather station in the crop, this will tell you exactly how the disease in your crop behaves. So again, we create a potato crop in the system, we add the late blight Ulrich-Schröter model into the disease, and then we set up our crop parameters. When is the crop still in dormancy? When is the emergence? In this case, beginning of April. And when is the end of our season? In this case, 21st of July. Then we set up some simple parameters. If you do not want to care about this, basically they are set up in a standard way, so you can just leave them as they are. But of course, you can choose if you have a sensitive crop or if you have a resistant crop to do a bit more tweaking and fine-tuning and even improve the working of the model even better. You can see the daily threshold, and then there will be a first threshold for the accumulated index for your first spray application, and there will be second thresholds for the follow-up chemical applications. Well, if we then see how this looks in real life, the green bars give us the daily risk index, and the red line gives us the daily risk threshold. And so you see that really there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, about 10 days really where we get a very big high risk of infection. In the background, we see actually the accumulated risk index also running up. If we then look at the next slide, basically when we get an infection day, as you can see here on the 24th of May, and our accumulated risk index has actually exceeded the threshold, then that's where the model will give you the alert to apply the first spray. In this case, all the previous small infections are not that important. the disease needs a certain time before it will really show in your crop. So that's why we have the accumulated risk, and of course the daily risk together with that will tell you that actually you need to spray. In this case, first application 24th of May. And after you apply this treatment, your accumulated index is then again reset to 0, and then we can start looking at our secondary risk threshold. And if we then we try and follow that throughout the season, here we can then see that we actually reach our second recommendation. And if we look and we follow this throughout the season, in this case it's about a period of 70 days, and in this 70 days we have actually applied only 5 treatments. Usually in 70 days with a weekly interval, you can all do the math, that would mean that in this case you would apply about 10 treatments, maybe 8 or so if you would start a bit later, but still with the Adcon system we can actually improve the timing and also reduce the number of sprays that are being applied to the crop. In this case, following the system, following the information will tell you exactly what to do. And basically this example shows in a nutshell what the Adcon system does. It makes of course use of our robust and reliable weather stations with a flexible set of sensors, and based on that the disease models do the work, they do the calculation, and they will tell you exactly what to do. And I think this way, with the Adcon system, we contribute to applying as little chemicals as possible, but of course it's not saving per se. In the end, we want to prevent the disease, because if we prevent the disease on the crop, that's the only way to improve yields. And then we get back to our first picture. If we want to really feed those 10 billion people in 2050, we really need to improve yields, improve quality to be able to feed all those people. And with that, we've actually come to the end of our presentation, and it's now then time to look at the questions that you have. Basically, the software has different components. The main system is called Advantage Pro, and Advantage Pro is usually password protected, and everybody can only see his own data or the weather station that he bought, or for instance the company that wants to give this person access to the data. We have several extensions like live data, where people or users can actually make weather data or soil moisture data or other data freely available to the public. So there is an option that the data is made available to the public. If you go to the website adcon.com, you will actually see some of these examples of the live weather data which is available. The trick of the disease extensions should be that they replay the life cycle of the fungus, and they replay the life cycle of the fungus based on the weather conditions. So if you measure the weather data properly, then yes, the models should work under different climatic conditions as well. If the algorithm is set up in a proper way, yes, there might be certain algorithms that have been developed for a specific disease in a specific area, but we prefer not to use those algorithms. If you have the disease algorithm, the disease extension with focuses on the disease, so it will then calculate the weather it will use the weather conditions to calculate the proper disease development. There might of course always be situations where if you have, for instance, a very high start pressure, or you have a very low start pressure. For instance, if you want to grow potatoes in the middle of the Sahara, well, you know for sure that there will be not a lot of disease pressure. So even if the weather conditions are favorable, you still might not need to spray. So there is of course exceptions to the rule, but basically if the disease extension is set up in a proper way, it should take care of the good calculation and give the right outcome to the user. Well, I think it's the flexibility of the platform. There is certain competitors where you run their disease model and you have no way of changing or modifying or do anything with it. You just get the outcome and that's it. In the Advantage Pro system, you can tweak, you can fine-tune, and you can set up certain or adjust certain calculations so it will fit your situation maybe better. So it's on the one hand I think the flexibility which makes us strong. On the other hand, I think we are also one of the few who use, like I said in the presentation, disease extensions or disease models that are created by experts in their fields. So we do not create the models ourselves. No, the models and the information is created by persons who are experts in their fields. And of course they know much better than us how the disease and crop, how they sort of combine together. Basically, yes. Yes, I do not see why not. Of course, you have to put the weather station then inside the greenhouse to measure the proper conditions. The only thing, of course, with the greenhouse is the disease models assume that there will be disease or spores or whatever coming in from the outside. In the greenhouse, you have some sort of a controlled environment, so it could be that it's giving over recommendations. But basically, I would say yes, it would be possible.